And it wasn't too long before that where, actors were freaking out about this. My students that I'm teaching photography to in University of Maryland are freaking out about it. Just time after time, in every market you can think of, like there's a lot of disruptions that are starting to happen. And it's kind of one of those cases of strange bedfellows that it turns out truckers and actors and all the people that, generally are fighting like hell amongst each other, turns out they've all got a lot in common on this very topic.
There off the top was the voice of photojournalist James Year, commenting on an issue he feels holds potential to create alliances where few have existed in American culture and commentary. Namely, he's talking about automation, artificial intelligence, and the import technology holds for work opportunity in a variety of fields. In trucking, where that's perhaps most salient, is in the operating of the trucks themselves, of course. I'm Todd Dills, and in this week's Overdrive Radio edition for June 24, 2025, we'll get an update on just where autonomous technology developers and some truck makers are in terms of tech development and commercial implementation of automated driver systems. The jumping off point will be James Year's short documentary published via the More Perfect Union video channels, which came with an ominous title and a video cover image clearly designed to raise a safety specter with respect to unmanned trucks on public roads. It overlaid a picture of a young woman holding a child to make it look like they were about to be run over, essentially, by a Peterbilt outfitted with the Aurora Innovation Company's driver system. The headline? Quote, "We chased driverless trucks in Texas. What we saw will scare you." End quote. Yet there's no crash in the video. There's not even a quote-unquote driverless truck in it. Rather, Year, with truck driver Will Cook in the passenger seat, tailed an Aurora Driver-outfitted truck that to start the trip actually had two operators in cab late in April. Year produced the video with others from the More Perfect Union team following a long photojournalism project for his master's work at Syracuse University. He's now teaching in Maryland, as you'll hear mentioned throughout the podcast today. The video itself is clearly aimed at the general public, and if it's aimed to scare them, though, it's not on a safety front that it focuses the story. As regards the safety specter raised by the title, James Year offered these thoughts.
I probably wouldn't have chosen that title, but type of thing. Obviously it was provocative. It kind of helped drive that. And, whenever anything online these days, I even see it in my classroom with students and stuff. Americans have, thanks to the tech industry, have basically the attention span of a goldfish, and you have to hook them like immediately and just keep
right.
going and going and going and going,
Right.
sort of a thing. So they know the market, and I've had a lot of input, and they were extremely great people to work with on that. But for stuff like that, I kind of had to just take a backseat, and it's like, hey, this is you guys know what you're doing. So I just had to trust them with that.
Misdirection in safety marketing isn't just the province of view-hungry video platforms, as it were. Look no farther than the message of autonomous truck developers themselves in some cases. On Kodiak Robotics' front page, for instance, the first text block you encounter purports to reveal the safety case for the why of what the company is attempting to build. It states, quote, "Driving is dangerous. More than 85% of truck crashes in the U.S. were caused by human error," end quote. Whose human error? As any trucker familiar with crash analysis stats will know, the majority of that 85% wasn't the fault of the professional, as it were. The text block then continues, quote, "From 2021 to 2023, large truck crashes led to more than 15,000 deaths in the U.S. Again, deaths caused by whom?" James Year's video doc nonetheless doesn't take its focus the safety of autonomous trucking mostly, but rather employment and work prospects for the untold thousands of owner-operators and company drivers working in the industry today. The often disputed and debunked driver shortage narrative gets broken down there. Likewise, some of the history of deregulation and the intense competition that resulted from the 1980s onward. All stories Overdrive readers will be largely familiar with. Year fundamentally asks the question of, what if all these autonomous tech companies are successful and there's real value achieved for fleets who really want to do it in safely removing the driver from the cab on a whole heck of a lot of commercial trucking moves? What happens to all the individuals who might have otherwise done that work? This question will make you think, no doubt, and we've posed it before. Plenty of companies we've asked about it, in fact, no longer exist. having imploded after investment cash dried up, or they made a small or large mistake and spooked whatever investors they already had. Still, existing tech companies like Aurora and Plus.ai and others working on robo-truck technology like Kodiak stick to the notion that if you're driving today, even if you're at the beginning of a trucking career, you'll be able to retire as a truck driver even with the march of this technology. For owner-operators, maybe the better question is, when will we have to compete with these systems at scale? I don't have a great answer after reporting this story, but what I can tell you is that the time is probably not exactly right now, as it were. The Atlas Energy Company's work with the Kodiak Robotics self-driving system has 4 trucks operating on private oil field lease roads in the Permian Basin. Everybody else utilizing these systems, it seems, still putting them down public roads with someone, at least, somewhere in the cab. Though they wouldn't directly answer the question of how many truly unmanned vehicles they have on the road today, the Aurora trucking operation I'd include in that, despite their May 1st commercial launch of quote-unquote driverless trucking service on I-45 between Houston and Dallas for Uber Freight and Hirschbach Motor Lines. Remember, a short time after, the company noted PACCAR had objected to any Peterbilt outfitted with the Aurora Driver being operated without a driver at the ready. The company said it would move its quote-unquote observers back into the front seat from the rear of the vehicle on some moves. An Aurora representative asked about that move, insisted the company's driver technology involved in the commercial launch was fully responsible for piloting the line haul portion of these runs, made a distinction between the observer terminology and the more typical safety driver terminology for an operator at the controls as a failsafe. Yet, it's probably safe to presume those observers aren't working for free. PACCAR representatives declined an opportunity to comment for this story. Aurora's driver also powers the Volvo Autonomous Solutions operation and the Volvo VNL Autonomous. DHL supply chain is using those VNLs along Texas line haul lanes too, yet company transportation president Jim Munkmeyer noted all AVs in DHL's network are operating with a safety driver. The system the company's set up has those safety drivers with the autonomous VNL on the line haul portion of the run between AV hubs, then local drivers on either end handling the rest of the move. As Munkmeyer pointed out, quote, "We in fact need more locally based drivers to do the first and last mile, allowing them to do multiple runs in a day and handle the more complex aspects of the route while returning home every night. Additionally, more drivers will be needed to support the AV hubs, undertaking tasks such as enhanced pre-trip planning, security checks, etc." End quote. Plus.ai, for its part, isn't at any kind of driver-out stage with its work with the Trayton Group. In North America, that's mostly the International Trucks brand for Class 8s. Earl Adams Jr., formerly of FMCSA and now Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs with Plus.ai, noted that all of its quote-unquote driver-out testing was being done on closed courses to date. So, has an autonomous truck taken a driver's job as yet? Maybe a couple out in the oil fields, as it were, yet not in hugely meaningful numbers. Yet the language Jim Munkmeyer used to describe DHL's relationship with Volvo Autonomous Solutions freight service with automated vehicles suggested that maybe owner-operators are in fact competing with AV trucking companies already. Munkmeyer described that relationship as DHL leasing capacity from the Volvo Group on the hub-to-hub line haul routes. Maybe we can think of Volvo and Aurora's place in the trucking marketplace like that of an owner-operator leased to a larger entity. If the analogy holds, well, perhaps owner-operators are competing with the tech trucking companies already. Stay lean on costs and you're no doubt poised to win that battle at present, though all could change if, quote-unquote, driver out hits in a big way. Photojournalist James Year certainly feels that human-tech competition is only set to grow in the coming years, and the need for more conversation about safety, business, and labor implications has never been greater.
Everybody's getting a different story on this type of a thing. I think like if we're really going to navigate this issue in a way that we can all agree to live with, like we've got to start having some like
public conversation about it.
Yeah. You know, like at the end of the day, the technology is not really the bad guy in all this. Like Steve said, it's how it's used. Sort of, you know, like sorry, 88 mics in the Army. You know, like it turns out like, you know, being a truck driver in the military is about the most dangerous job that you can get. And you know, I think that would be the perfect place for this tech. There might be others too, but you know, it's kind of one of those things where, we got to find a better way to live with this.
How quick is it coming? Tell us what you think in a 2-question survey you'll find at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio in the post that houses this podcast for June 24th, 2025. Aurora's been targeting the 27 to 28 time frame for broader scale hardware and software rollout on OEM production lines, though some analysts are certainly more pessimistic about those recent projections. After the break, though, we'll dig into where Year's documentary project originated and more about the video with More Perfect Union. So keep tuned.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear before it starts. And now, choose a size that fits your ride. 64-ounce, 32-ounce, and the all-new 15-ounce for diesel pickups and smaller tanks. Warm weather's here. Defend your diesel with Howe's. Available at retailers nationwide and on Amazon.
Find more information at howesproducts.com. Here's James Year. Harking back to the beginning of the documentary project, you can find in full at his stealingfire.tech website.
Let's go. We got to go. We got to get there.
It really kind of started off during COVID when I took a break from grad school and I was trying to figure out what the master's project was going to be, type of thing. And I was over in Ohio University and COVID hit, and I wasn't going to do a photojournalism degree over Zoom, so I got a job at the post office. And in like the 10 months I worked there, I read like 80 books. It's just power, like going through an audiobook every day when I'm getting chased by dogs. That's a real thing, especially if you're a fill-in carrier. But I read everything from American history, economics, brushing up on my sociology background a bit, and I've got really interested in technology ever since the not WikiLeaks, like the NSA revelations through Edward Snowden, and the stuff back then was nuts. But anyways, I kept on reading all these economic historians' books, like The Technology Trap and The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, and all the books that I read on the subject all mentioned trucking. So that got me, that's kind of what started me on this path. And then, fast forwarding a bit, I get up to Syracuse and met some cool people. Up there, a friend of mine, Ben Cleaton, who's a great filmmaker, introduced me to Rollo Wilson, and that's kind of where I got like the start, the first couple miles down the road on this project. And it's been nuts. Just the photography thing got a couple of really crazy successes early on. Again, it's a longer story, but it got a $20,000 grant, and even despite that, I struggled for 2 years to get this published anywhere. Until More Perfect Union came along, and now we just see this monstrous explosion of interest in this topic, which is, I was ripping my hair out for 2 years, and now it's like, holy crap! Now everybody wants to talk, which is awesome. But yeah, that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of everything.
Tell me about the process of kind of coming to them. Like, how did you get connected with the More Perfect Union group there? I mean, they're like video focused mostly, right?
Yeah.
Other things too.
Well, the crazy thing about More Perfect Union, and I don't know, just the way that all this kind of came together, it's actually got me wanting to go back to church again, sort of a thing, because it's just the weird. No, it's I'm serious. It's weird. Like the way that I met or got hooked up with More Perfect Union is that I went to this Fosnock festival with a buddy of mine, Matt Callahan. And
what festival?
It's called the Fosnock Festival out in West Virginia.
Okay.
It's a small Swiss community, and they burn an effigy of in winter and use it as an excuse to drink a lot of beer and have a lot of fun, right? It's right. And then I was walking around in the crowd, just getting into some good trouble out there, and I recognized a guy in the crowd, and that guy was John Russell. He's the main host for More Perfect Union, and I was like, "Crap, is that him?" Went up and asked, and he was like, "Yeah, that's me." And, I started badgering him real hard on this in a major way. And it's like, hey, I've been working on this for years. It's gotten these grants. It's, it's got recognition. It's a thing. It's about to happen for the first time.
Meaning Aurora's eventual May 1st announcement of the launch of commercial quote unquote trucking as a service operations with partners Uber Freight and Hirschbach Motor Lines, which James Year had been tracking Aurora executives talk around for quite some time.
When were you in Texas? That was one of the questions I was going to ask. Was that pretty recently?
Yeah, that was Aurora, kind of getting back to your earlier point on the skepticism and everything. It's like, these guys have kicked the can down the road so many times that the skepticism is pretty well justified. But their marketing materials and stuff to their investors was very after they delayed in December, and then they were very aggressive about launching in April, right? And we ended up going down at the end of April because I figured they've kicked the can down the road so many times already. They're gonna wait till the end of the month, and if I was them, I would do it on a weekend to have a big watch party and celebrations and all the things that I would do if I was them. So that's when we went down there. I was pretty close to being right on that. We just missed it probably by a couple of days, and then they announced that they kicked the driver out of the cab on May 1st, which is May Day, International Workers' Day, which I thought was like the irony of that was not lost on me, sort of a thing. And that's kind of how we decided to go down there during that time frame.
Do we really know though whether they actually took the driver out of the? I think there's still drivers in those trucks, right? They may not have been sitting in the front seat for a while, but somebody was in there.
There's a lot of back and forth on that, but like it really kind of came down to the OEMs like Volvo and PACCAR causing a little bit of fuss about that due to liability concerns, and that's the main thing holding this industry back. But Aurora did run, according to their own marketing materials, like 1,200 miles of like purely driverless freight. And based on what I've seen following these things around and everything else, it's like they proved it's possible. And this is a $200 to $300 billion domestic industry that they just created overnight by being able to prove that's possible to do it on our interstates.
Almost all these companies now are trying to demonstrate their technology as trucking companies and not exactly putting it up for sale to the broad market, right? But do we know anything about what this technology as it exists today, and to the extent that it works, like what it costs?
Well, like so far, like they're still in the R&D and of all this sort of a deal. So like so far, the AV autonomous vehicle industry has been just a giant investor black hole type of a thing. But like the reason that investors keep pumping money into this is just the value proposition of it, where there's hundreds of billions of dollars of what would have been drivers' paychecks sitting on the table for whoever can automate this, right? So it's a long-term investment. You gotta keep that into perspective there. But the other aspect of that, as far as the cost of these things, like right now, like these are all like hand-built, purpose-built machines by nerds, right? And so like they're real expensive. I don't know what the dollar amount is, but as far as there's another company out there which we didn't. I wish we could have added some more color on all that. But Plus AI, back in 2021. They put out an investor presentation for another funding round, and in there they were saying that their system's a little bit different. It's a two-stage system where one's like a data acquisition package, and then the other one's like the full level 4 driverless, which they're also testing down in Texas. I've seen them down there on I-45 too. But Amazon bought into that system in a very major way, and in that investor presentation, they were saying that the level 1 or the first stage system was like around $20,000 to implement, and then the second stage of that is like around $50,000. So like the hardware cost isn't insurmountable.
James Year referenced reporting that projected as many as 1,000 Plus AI system outfitted units on the roads. Yet when I asked Plus AI Vice President of Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs, Earl Adams Jr., about it, Adams noted the Amazon partnership featured units outfitted with Plus Drive Level 2 advanced assistance systems as a means toward gathering data with intent to show safety performance with those driver assist systems. Adams was a counsel for and eventually deputy administrator with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration at the time. And as he notes about his tenure as a regulator, quote, "With FMCSA, what we wanted to see was safety benefits," he said. Plus was using data from the Amazon partnership with the Level 2 system, quote, "as a foundational tool to build confidence in AVs in general," end quote. As for those 2021 projected cost figures James Year mentioned, Adams just didn't know where eventual projected cost to the end user sat right now, given evolution over time. He said the company's announced publicly the notion of a per-mile system to profit share with its truck OEM partner, Trayton Group. In the U.S. and over-the-road trucking, that would be international trucks primarily. Year also noted this about Aurora leader Chris Urmson's talk about where his company's service was going.
And Chris Urmson was also talking to investors too, that once you remove the driver and get something that's consistent, then you can start depopulating parts of the other trucks and bring the cost down. So, as far as like the per unit costs, they're not going to be insurmountable for like the mega carriers and stuff. And then there's also the rent seeking side of this, where it's basically going to be per mile subscription based.
The Aurora Innovations rep I communicated with confirmed that its current trucking as a service offering is paid for on a per mile basis by the likes of Uber Freight and Hirschbach with the recent commercial launch. And the next model, Driver as a Service, where trucking company customers will order trucks with the driver module installed and own both the truck and the hardware, versus today with Aurora operating as a trucking company. That Driver as a Service offering will be paid for per mile as well. According to James Year, when he spoke to Aurora at the 2024 Mid-America Trucking Show, Rep spoke of the Aurora Driver system as modular, capable of being transferred from power unit to power unit, provided the truck architecture could accommodate the system. Some of the other players in autonomous technology have talked about their systems that way in the past too.
A lot of the Aurora system is, at least back then, this might have changed, but it's kind of a plug-and-play system where, like, after you get all the miles of the truck, you can unbolt the system and then put it onto another one, and then sell the old truck off to the international market or whatever else. So, like the modularity aspect of this, like I think like Aurora is getting the lion's share of the attention right now, and it's like the thing that bothers me about this is that there's virtually nothing out there about Plus, and their work with Amazon. The line haul parcel market's going to get hit. Like that's probably going to be the market that gets hit first, and Amazon would be a huge player in that.
Those kinds of runs are between kind of predictable in terms of what's going where. And when I asked other folks, like just generally out there about from an owner operator's standpoint, I mean most of our readers are kind of not in that predictable freight, predictable lane type of market, but nonetheless, like how much should those folks be worried about having to compete with this stuff? And if not now, like when?
With the line haul guys, especially in the parcel market, absolutely. Like granted, it's going to take a couple of years to spin up the production lines, and again, they have to overcome the liability issue. And the second that happens, like they're going to start spinning up the lines, type of a deal. But as far as what markets to worry about first, I think in Aurora's investment materials, they're talking, dry van, reefers. I saw some stuff on wiggle wagons and intermodals, another big one, type of a thing too. So like the over-the-road, cross-country, grocery haulers, going from the California Valley out to New York, type of a thing. They're probably going to be okay for a while yet. But the thing that I would say is that anytime industrial automation enters any market, there's a corresponding downward pressure on rates and wages, right? So like if you have all these drivers getting pushed out of the Southwest and like, say Texas, New Mexico and Arizona, and then California and east, because Kodiak is pushing out east. You push all these drivers out of one market, they're going to have to go someplace else. And anytime you have the industrial automation thing where you have downward pressure on rates, and then you match that with the labor surplus, it's a double whammy, right? Because if you have all these desperate drivers looking for anything that they can get to pay their leases, that labor competition is going to hurt too. So that's kind of the biggest immediate thing. I could talk about this for hours.
Right.
But there's also the interstate regulation side of things, and there's a big beautiful bill and all that crap that's happening right now, which I just saw that Marjorie Taylor Greene is railing against that now, or the AI stuff on there, which is nuts. There's a page or two in there that basically bans all AI regulation at the state level. And in the video that we did with More Perfect Union, we talk about the Teamsters. They've got a half dozen active bills right now, and there's been a lot of others that have either died in committee. Like there's one in Indiana. I think there's another one that the Teamsters supported in upstate New York that did something similar type of a thing. But if that gets passed and signed into law, all of those bills are dead, and the Teamsters are the ones that are leading the way on the state regulation on all this. Like Waida's doing some great too. I don't want to not mention them.
We reported on the provisions James Year mentioned there in the big and beautiful budget bill both houses of Congress are working on, and indeed a version of the provision barring state regulation of AI for 10 years is being worked over in the Senate version as well as having passed the House. The Senate version would make adherence to the ban a condition of states' receipt of broadband expansion money from the federal government. That is, if a state passes laws or promulgates regulation that in any way restricts automated systems use and/or development, no broadband expansion money for that state. The state bills year reference many of them anyway. Overdrive is also reported on, and a majority of members of the audience have signaled support for them in general. Generally, what they do is require a human operator in any autonomous, tech-driven truck, more or less preserving the status quo of what's happening in most of the tests and apparently Aurora's commercial halls today, where, as noted, as far as I can gather, there is a quote-unquote observer in the cab of any truck moving on a public road. California's legislature has passed a version of a requirement for a human operator in cab twice, with close to unanimous legislative support, yet it's twice been vetoed by the governor there as well. They teed up a third effort fairly recently. The Texas House, too. Yet, as noted here, the Texas Senate was up to different things James Year felt could be seen as a result of the Autonomous Vehicle Association's efforts with state senators.
I found one in the Texas Senate as well that kind of does the opposite.
The AV industry, the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association industry, like they're fighting tooth and nail to get all the preferential treatment they can get.
The state regulations would be a moot point. If the big beautiful bill survives its way through the U.S. Senate. Do you see like some of the legislative efforts as a valid venue to approach this? And what is the solution? Do you like the approach, for instance, of the bills in Texas and that have been vetoed in California, that kind of thing, or something national? Doing that nationally, I guess, does that make sense to you? And do you think it's possible? I suppose.
Yeah, so there's a lot to dig in there. I don't know if I'm quite the guy to I know enough about trucking to know how much I don't know about trucking, but I think for right now, at least, I think the Teamsters idea of like requiring a human operator behind the wheel and then mandating that there's a safety and public oversight reporting structure in place to level the playing field to make sure that there's these companies are actually getting the results that they say they're getting. I think that's a wonderful place to start. As far as long-term stuff, Steve Selly mentioned in his interview that 20 years from now, it is all going to be robots. Type of a thing, or maybe 30 years or whatever else. Yeah, I think later on we're gonna have to start.
He fully believes that. Yeah, okay.
Well, maybe not all robots, but it's going to take a huge bite out of the industry for sure. Type of a thing, and with everything else going on to an industrial automation and manufacturing and everything else, there's been some proposals out there about like taxing the robots type of a thing. I think that discussion needs to start happening. I think is if you're, I don't know what it would be, but if you tax these things at 10 cents a mile or 25 cents a mile or something like that, you're going to slow the rate of adoption, and then you're going to have the problem kind of pay for itself type of a deal where you can, have other retraining programs, or you can pay off people's leases if they're being negatively affected by this or something like that. Again, I'm not qualified to, have the...
Or just kind of floating some idea. I mean, kind of what I love about this thing, because it's, it makes you think in some ways that maybe you might not always. I think for the average owner operator out there who's, who just looks at the world as it is and right in front of his eyes, and you're just not. A lot of this stuff is kind of unseen and just kind of happening in the background for a lot of folks, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is just on social media. Like, we're all siloed and segregated into our little camps and stuff. We see the stuff that we want to see and not the stuff that we need to. Whenever it comes to truckers, I don't know, that whole Gavin Newsom AB 316 thing really bugged me in a whole way, because this is a bipartisan issue that everybody can get behind. And AB 316 passed with well over 90% in both houses, and Newsom sided with the tech industry and did it anyway. And it wasn't too long before that where, actors were freaking out about this. My students that I'm teaching photography to in University of Maryland are freaking out about it. Just time after time, in every market you can think of, there's a lot of disruptions that are starting to happen. And it's kind of one of those cases of strange bedfellows that it turns out truckers and actors and all the people that, generally are fighting like hell amongst each other, Turns out they've all got a lot in common on this very topic. And I think truckers have a great opportunity to kind of lead the way in the conversation.
There's a huge amount of visibility there. Just everybody gets out on the road at some point, right? Like, I don't know. I often feel like it's there should be more public empathy with truck drivers and than there is, and we got a good example of that during COVID, where there was a big spike because everybody kind of all of a sudden realized, that's right. All this stuff just doesn't magically appear. Anyway,
that uptick in appreciation for the work truckers of all stripes do was certainly a welcome byproduct of the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Better rates paid for freight movement as time went on, even better. As with rates, though, appreciation has felt like it's crashed in the years since, and the year's short documentary pitches with a safety scare image and headline, where it ends up is with the first and last verses of our own long-haul Paul Marhofer's Ghost of John Henry song, which invokes the legend of a freedman steel driver chronicled in a folk blues song about his mortal battle with the steam-powered drill come to replace his labor. That first verse: I saw the ghost of John Henry. He was cackling through his chain. He said, "You may beat the machine one time, they're going to kill you just the same."
I saw the ghost of John Henry. He was cackling through his chain. I saw the ghost of John Henry. He was cackling through his chain. He said, "You may beat the machine one time, they're gonna kill you just the same."
Marhofer was inspired to write the song after seeing a promo video way back in 2016 from the auto company, which has since imploded. It showed views of an apparently unmanned Volvo pulling a load of Budweiser beer out in Colorado. As with so many other of such stunts, though, yeah, there was somebody in the truck, but not up front in the driver's seat as it moved during the filming that was shown in the vid. The rest of Marhofer's Ghost of John Henry track has the speaker fantasizing about going out and buying a 1999 model rig, one that might allow him to, quote, chase the sun into that endless day where only God can stamp my time.
John Henry said to me, "Now, son, what you gonna do?" And this is what I said. "I'm gonna blow away my 401k and buy me a 99. I'm gonna blow away my 401k and buy me a 99. I'm gonna chase the sun into the endless day where only God can stamp my time."
Yet outrunning technology is a fool's errand, the Ghost re-emphasizes to close out the song, repeating that first verse.
"I saw the ghost of John Henry. He was cackling through his chain. He said, 'You may beat the machine one time, they're gonna kill you just the same.'"
As far as the safety aspects of autonomous trucks, though James Year acknowledges the attention grab aspects of that scary-looking cover image for the video, likewise the headline, when they followed the truck with its safety drivers along I-45 back in late April, driver Will Cook, along for the ride, had some trouble interpreting the AV's intentions time to time, a lot of which didn't make it into the final cut, given James Year opted not to put a forward-facing video camera in the windshield, he said.
These sensors, they'll pick up stuff on the side of the road and all this kind of stuff. And then, the system wants to, go left or right, and they'll signal strangely. And just from, just a four-wheeler non-trucker perspective, it's like, I had, when you watch that, it's hard to figure out what the intent of the truck is, right? And then Will, it's knowing the situations of where your truck should be in relation to everything else, what everybody else is doing, what lane you need to be in when. That's like learning a whole other language. And, there's a lot of stuff that we couldn't put in there because we didn't have that, the exact footage of what the truck was doing. But, Will was firing off pretty crazy.
He narrated the experience pretty well. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We have the footage matched with it perfectly. Then doesn't work. So to borrow an environmental term, like truckers are kind of like beavers in a way. So like in in the environmentalist circles, there's a term called keystone species. So like in the context of a beaver builds a dam, it creates a bunch of water that brings in fish, bugs, which brings in predators and all these other things. So like, beavers there, you have all these other jobs. And likewise, with truckers, there's all these other industries and businesses that support drivers.
Sure.
And there's a couple towns that I found that, they're real highly concentrated on CDLs to make their local economies work. And if you lose the truckers, then you have this downhill effect of everything else. So it's not just truckers that you got to worry about.
That's all over the country. That there are places like that, no doubt. I mean,
just the projected impact of what this is going to do to rural America, structure the industry. It's like it's going to hurt. This like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, like the downhill effects of this are going to be traumatic, to put it mildly.
I'll say though, again, all the tech players in this space stick to the line that goes a little like, if you're driving a truck today, even if you've just started your professional trucking career, you'll be able to retire a truck driver if you truly want to. That's perhaps cold comfort for a trucking business owner, nonetheless, thinking about competition with unmanned systems. So owner-operators, how are you truly thinking about issues of safety, competition, and more when it comes to any implementation of truly unmanned trucks on public roadways? Weigh in via our 2-question survey in the post that houses this podcast for June 24th, 2025 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. I'll post a link to it in the show notes. Likewise to James Year's StealingFire.tech documentary project, including the More Perfect Union video that sparked this episode and our conversation with him. Big thanks to him and to our own Long Haul Paul Marhofer for audio of his Ghost of John Henry track. Find all those links via the show notes wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and big thanks in advance for it. As always, big thanks for listening. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Lamech, Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator, Jasmine Campbell, senior editor Matt Cole, executive editor Alex Lockie, and video editors Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Glenn.
I gotta have the harmonic in this. I just forgot to do this. Bear with me.